What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How to Lead podcast, conversation designed to help you develop yourself and those around you. My name's Adam, joined by Clay. So Clay, we're going to deliver on that promise again, how to develop yourself and those around you. But very specifically today, we're going to talk about or try to answer this question: is it possible to develop your boss? Anything I can do to help that relationship? So I was in a room with some leaders yesterday here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, client that I've been working with over the last 6-8 months, and I had taken them through 4 kind of half-day trainings last year, and we did a follow-up session yesterday. So I sent them out a Google form and listed all the topics we covered last year. So which of these do you want to revisit? And then I had a spot just, are there any other questions or topics you want to talk about? And the overwhelming theme was, hey, we've talked all about how to kind of lead with my peers and lead my team. I need help with my boss. And so we had a lot of questions about, what do I do if my boss is not a great leader, when they're trying to make my job harder? Just what do I do with this relationship? And I have to admit, I wasn't surprised. It's not really a topic that I covered with them last year, and I've certainly been there, done that. I have felt that pressure sometimes. I would imagine you can relate too, right?
You know, I feel like there's been so many different lines about why people leave a company, right?
Yeah.
You know, you got people don't leave the company, they leave the culture, or people don't want to leave the company, they end up leaving the fit of their job. But yeah, eventually that one gets thrown in there for sure, that people don't leave the job, they leave their boss. And I don't know how true that actually is, but it's certainly a big part of it. It certainly deserves a seat at the table, because we've all worked for men and women who have been great to work for, and we've worked for men and women that have not been. And oftentimes our own satisfaction, engagement at work, joy in life, meaning in the world correlates, right, with how great the boss is. And so this does matter deeply for your own personal satisfaction, but also I think feeling some mission around it. It really helps. It really, I think it helps us figure out how to bring more mission and more agency to work when we feel like I don't have to be a victim to the quality of my boss.
That's right. That's right. And so again, these are some relationships that are really, really challenging for a lot of people. I just read Matthew Kelly's book. It's an old one. It's been out a while, called The Dream Manager. And Clay, he had a line in there that said, it was just so profound. It's like, I don't know why I haven't thought about this before. And it was basically, I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but the sentiment will be there, which is people don't want to fail, right? They don't wake up every day to fail. What it is they don't know how to succeed. And so it kind of flips this like, oh, you've got some things that are challenging. The reason you keep butting your head against the wall is because you don't know another way to do it. You don't know how to succeed. And so I think that's where this conversation on how to develop this relationship or have a good, healthy relationship with our boss is so helpful. It's not that people want to fail here. It's just a lot of times we don't even know what to do to succeed.
Yeah. When you thought about this episode, I mean, there's so much to say, so many different angles to go. You sent me 6 different options. Where did you get these? Were these just top of mind things?
Yeah, things from own experience, and then obviously our cheap paid research assistant with ChatGPT helped to nuance a few of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are things that when I look back over my career, I mean, you know, one of the things you and I have talked about is we've kind of been in mid-level leadership for pretty much all of our career, right? Like I've always had a boss. And so I've got a lot of experience of relationships that I've handled well, that I haven't handled well. I've had the privilege of being a boss, you know, for years and seen some people that have done that incredibly well. So much that we could say about this. We just want to throw 3 things out here. And we're kind of calling this like how to play the hand you've been dealt.
Yeah. That's
so we don't really get to pick our boss a lot of times. So you've been dealt a hand. How do you make the most out of that hand? Whether you got pocket 10s or pocket aces, this is the way to play that poker hand, and just what you can do to help develop that relationship. So, Clay, the first thing I would say, like this was one of the big unlocks for me, that when I am in rooms with leaders, we have to start here. And the idea is this is understanding your boss's world. So I'll use a really buzzy term: empathy, awareness. And the unlock for me that has been really helpful and that I see is resonating with rooms with leaders that have bosses when I share this is just assume your boss's job is incredibly stressful, incredibly difficult, very vulnerable feeling. Assume they're suffering from imposter syndrome in one form or another. Assume they don't have the answers. They don't have some playbook that they know exactly what needs to happen. And just assume that everything is really challenging for them. They too, like you, feel like they're pushing boulders uphill every day. And I don't mean to say that just to start like dark and pessimistic. I just think that helps us start to generate a little bit of empathy towards the situation that they're finding themselves in when we start there.
Do you think the boss's job is always harder?
Always is a hard word to say.
Sure.
So do I generally?
Usually.
Yes. Yeah, usually I do. I mean, I think big multi-level organizations with tiers of leadership, I think one of the biggest challenges for being a boss is that you are held accountable for things that you are not responsible for doing. So again, and we see this all the time in the sports world, the coach gets fired when the team doesn't win, even though the coach was not on the field. So they're held accountable.
Didn't play the plays, right.
That's right. They're held accountable for the team's execution of performance. So think about that. Your boss, his or her next raise or promotion or bonus is due to you being able to deliver on goals, objectives, and measures, right? And so that is a very vulnerable position. So if they feel a little antsy when they're around you, they've got some skin in the game, right? There's something going on there that's very vulnerable. And that's a really, really difficult to know that I'm being held accountable. Like my name is on the line here for things that I'm not responsible for doing. So yeah, I think it is harder.
Whether it's harder or not, whether your boss has a harder job than you or he or she doesn't, I believe this shift in thinking to convince yourself that he does, or to convince yourself that she does have a harder job or more difficult job than you, I think that shift alone would help your relationship with your boss by 20, 30, 40, 50%.
That's
I think this shift is so significant that I had gotten to a point in my career, Adam, where I had convinced myself, I don't know if his or her job is harder, but I know that I will be better for him or her if I convince myself that it is. So I think that one shift, it might be the whole reason why you clicked on this to listen to this episode, is to just convince yourself that his job or her job is harder than yours.
Yep. Yeah. They're not just sitting around playing video games, drinking margaritas, watching Seinfeld.
Drinking high noons at 2 p.m., getting ready to go play some golf, right? That's what I used to think my boss's job was.
Right.
Oh, it must be nice.
That's
must be nice.
Hanging out with Post Malone, drinking high noons and Bud Lights, watching Shane Gillis YouTube clips. It's not that. It's not that. Okay, so that is one way. You want to play the hand you're dealt. You want to be able to develop that relationship. Just assume it's really, really challenging. That changes your countenance. That gives you helps you a little bit with giving the benefit of the doubt. Helps you garner a little bit of empathy and sympathy for them. Okay, then.
Well, before you move on, can I just offer one to do? Here's a simple way to apply this: is ask yourself the question, what is my boss most anxious about? What's keeping my boss up at night? What's waking my boss up in the morning? What's the thing that's bothering my boss? I think it should be on everybody's job description to manage the anxiety of your boss, not in a emotionally unhealthy way, not in a way that needs some boundaries, but you should pay attention. If he's worried about we're not getting enough clients, if she's worried that we're losing too many clients, if they're worried about whether or not we're going to hit the budget, if they're worried about whether or not our product is quality enough, that should be the thing that you're worried about. It should be the thing that you're most concerned about, or at least maybe not most concerned about, but it should be on your list. It should be on the list of things that you're thinking about as well.
That's good. That's good. Okay, second one I would say this is, so it falls under the general category of managing your expectations and very specifically recognizing that no boss is perfect. One of the things that I see, and this is a challenge. So again, let's imagine I take a bunch of mid-level leaders through close to 40 hours of leadership development training. We talk about so many topics, so many skills. They've got homework. They're getting better. One of the things that they will start to do as they feel empowered and they feel like they're getting trained and developed is they'll now start to judge other leaders by this standard now that they feel like that they've learned. And so a lot of times they'll now start putting their boss under a very high-powered microscope and going, whoa, 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 whoa. I was just taught exactly how to coach and you're not doing that. hey, hold up, hold up. I was taught that I need to make time for my team, but you make no time for me. And so we start to put this standard on our bosses, expecting them to be perfect when that's not even a standard we put on ourselves anymore. And so this one's a little tied in to the other one of expecting or just assuming that their job is hard, but just remembering that they are not perfect is incredibly helpful on developing that relationship.
Yeah, I think about our relationships with our aging parents, Adam, right? I feel like I vacillate between two polar thoughts. One, oh my goodness, how did my parents do it so well when I was such a mess, right? Number two, on the flip side, now that I'm a parent and have seen the light, why didn't they? Or what were they thinking? Or
Yes.
why did they not show up or say the right, there's whatever it may be. And I think in the same way, I think our relationship with our aging parents, the key is managing those expectations, right? And the reality that sets in that is actually helpful is that your parents were not perfect, right? For a lot of you, you're going, yeah, you don't need to tell me that twice. I figured that out when I was 12, right? But I would say it certainly changes your role. It certainly changes your relationship with them when you can just manage your expectations. It's easy to focus on what your boss isn't doing. Try to focus on what your boss is doing, right?
Yeah.
Try to remind yourself that they've got seasons of great performance and then they have their own personal life. They've got their own challenges that might be getting in the way. But what it does, I think, is it just helps you show a little more compassion, offer a little more grace, navigate that relationship with them a little bit better. The problem I see with most people that I've experienced myself, Adam, is when you think your job is to try to change your boss.
That's right.
Right? When you think it's my job to develop my boss and help my boss needs to be a better vision caster, or I got to make sure that my boss's presentations are better than they have been, or I've got to make sure that my boss is facilitating the meeting like I think he or she should do. No, if you'll drop that and realize, hey, your job is not to change your boss, but your job is to be a gift, to be an asset for your boss, it will change the relationship with your boss.
I mean, Clay, you bring up parents, and this is what reminds me of here. Do you remember that day or that season when your eyes finally opened up and you realized your parents were just people?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that day, and there's some, it's sobering, but there's something
sobering.
very maturing about it. It does change.
It allowed me to have a friendship with my parents, which is what you're hoping for, right? As an adult, is that you want the relationship to shift from being, parent child to we have a relationship. We have a friendship, right? A healthy friendship. So I think that same thing is possible for your boss. A little bit of compassion goes a long way. Yeah.
I think some of the things that we really run into with is like this idea that we do believe that a perfect leader is out there. And it makes me think of Ashley Goodall and Marcus Buckingham in their book, 9 Lies About Work, and just that myth that there is a well-rounded person out there. Well-rounded doesn't exist. We're all spiky. So we've all got things that we're amazing at and things that we're not so great at. And I think a lot of times if we get frustrated with our boss, it's because we're running into some of their spikes, so to speak. It's some of what makes them great at their job. And those things are not going to really change overnight any more than we can change our spikes. They're just there. So anyway, just managing those expectations and recognizing that no boss is perfect and we can't change them. Last one, because this is something that you were asked recently, and I think this is a good one to end on here, is just reminding people that when it comes to this relationship with your boss, so you can't change people, but you can try to influence people, and that influence is not manipulation. So if we're going to influence people, there's a way to influence that is more authentic and builds trust and is more strategic. So talk about that question that you were asked and how you navigated that and how to think through that.
Well, I was talking about the how to lead when you're not in charge concept, which I talk about, multiple times a week. And so I've been doing that for the last few years, and I've gotten a lot of questions. I think it was the first time anybody had ever asked me it that directly. How do you know when influence is manipulative? How do you know when you're just trying to get somebody to do the thing you want them to do versus how do you know when you're really cultivating influence for good, when you're doing it from a healthy standpoint? And it was good. And I practiced some of the things that we've talked about with coaching. I try to push it back on the person and say, well, tell me your thoughts on it before I give you mine, right? Tell me about why you're asking and Tell me what else makes you ask this, right? But that conversation, it definitely made me think, what is it? How would I explain, what is the difference? Because there are certainly people who have cultivated influence, and yet they were also manipulative. So influence to me is one of those, it's like a rock. You can build buildings with a rock, and then you can also tear things down, and you can create some real havoc with a rock, right? Internet, social media, same kind of thing. It's amoral in a way. My first examples I thought about were the documentary We Work. Did you watch that?
Yeah, it wasn't a documentary. It was a dramatic retelling of the.
That's true. Yeah.
So it was called We Crashed, right? We Crashed.
That's right.
On Apple TV.
Adam, what is his name?
Adam Newman.
Adam Newman. Oh, fascinating. And he was a great example of someone I think at first we would go, whoa, well, it's not at first, but still massively influential person. But in the end, you go, oh, maybe there was a good bit of manipulation in there. The other thing I thought about Adam was, do you remember the Fire Festival?
Yes, I just read about that this morning in this book that I'm reading.
Serious?
Yeah, yes.
What is it? FYRE, I believe.
Yes.
I don't remember that guy's name, but he created this. He was trying to create like his own version of Woodstock, and it ended up being kind of a big sham. In the Caribbean, it certainly sold more than it delivered. That's for sure. That's a kind way of saying it. But I think both of those examples are examples of leaders that are highly influential, but in the end, they were seen as incredibly manipulative. So leading up, it doesn't mean you're sucking up. It does mean that you're earning trust, and it does mean that you have influence. But you're not making demands for yourself. You're making demands for the good of the team, for the good of the organization, or even for the good of the leader. I think in the end, it really comes back to those intrinsic motivations, those deep desires. What are you really aiming for? Is it just for yourself, or is it really for the other person?
Yeah, and if you've taken time to get to know your boss and some of those things, you have access to some information that can be really helpful on how to communicate things. What comes to mind, on Friday, I was coaching a leader who's in financial services, and he is working on putting together a list of this is what we think the ideal leader in our organization, like what we want to be a trusted advisor, and these are the skills that we need. And so he has to, he exists in an organization. He can't just come up with these things and then go and teach them. He needs to get some approvals. And he knew one of the partners in that organization, what he had learned by getting to know this boss was that if I can point all of these back to the core values, that's really going to speak volumes.
There you go.
To this leader. And so he wasn't manipulating. He was just going, I need to let him know that I've been thoughtful about how this ties into core values. And he tied every single one of them back, and it went really well. And so I think that's a great example of somebody just going, I know my boss, I know what their hot buttons are, and so I'm going to take this and influence him in a positive way, not in a manipulative way, and make sure that he knows I've been thoughtful about core values as we're putting this together. I think it's a great example of somebody who's playing the hand that they were dealt and trying to build that relationship with their boss in a way that is incredibly helpful. So again, Clay, so much that we could say on this, but just knowing that their job is hard, just believe it's hard. Don't expect them to be perfect, and do what you can to influence. And the best way to do that is to not manipulate. Obviously, do it by building trust. I don't know if you were dealt pocket tens, if that's going to help you win the hand, but I think that'll help you at least stay in a little bit, right? You can make it a game. You got a shot of being able to do that. Those are three ideas of many that we could go over that will help you really start to build that relationship with your boss.
Yeah, understand your boss's world, manage your expectations, and then influence without being manipulative. I think if you'll do that, I think the thing that it does for me is when the idea, when the inspiration, when the empowerment set in for me on I've got an opportunity here to serve this person, help this person, influence this person, it gave me a longer shelf life in my job. It extended the shelf life for me because it gave me something to think about, something to work on, right? As opposed to, again, the worst thing you can do is feel like, oh, my boss is who he is, or my boss is who she is, and I'm a victim to that. No. You have a sincere opportunity here to build a great relationship with your boss. And I would just encourage you, learn whatever it is you can learn before you move on and do something else. And that includes learning how to have a great relationship with the person that you're working for. So I believe it will help you stay longer in your job. It'll give you a little bit more autonomy and agency in your job. But also, I think it really helps you learn a skill that will be valuable for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Clay, as always, great to be with you.
You too, Adam. Thanks.
Well, that's all we got for today's episode of the How to Lead podcast. You can always reach out to us via email. We can be reached at info@howtolead.work. That's info@howtolead.work. Every episode is mixed and edited by the team over at Sound of a Rose. You can learn more about them at soundofarose.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.